the last hour and a half of our course, unless you still have work to do and want to catch up on. Oh, hi, Tiff. That's great. Unless you want to still catch up or on your work or improve your score, we will have the course open until Sunday night. But Sunday night is really a hard deadline. So at midnight, the course will shut down and you will not have access anymore. So make sure you will you get to the point score you wish to achieve before then, so that there are no surprises. Again, your team today is Taryn and me. We are both employed at Pdsa, and Taryn is in a public space today. She has a lot of background noise, so if you want to communicate with her, you may chat at her. The chat box is down below in your menu bar. A speech bubble with 3 dots says chat, and you can click on this and then either chat the whole group or an individual person if you go through the select which person you would like to address. And with that, I'm wondering if everybody has access with sound and camera, and it seems like we are successful today. Great. All right, I will share my screen for our agenda for today. So the content last week that you all did really well on was about measuring care coordination, and we addressed process measures and outcome measures. Process measures are more looking at the ways how we improve our care delivery. And outcome measures is how does the patient respond with his or her health outcomes or behavioral outcomes, really the patient-centric aspects we want to eventually affect. So you can think of the process measures have to be in place to lead to the outcome measures that we are actually potentially going to be judged on, because helping our patients is really our end goal. So my question to you is, and you can openly unmute yourself and let me know, which process or outcome measures are you using in your facilities as of now? That you are aware of, because I'm sure everybody has process or outcome measures that are being tracked either for reimbursement or for internal quality improvement. What are your process and or outcome measures that your facility is tracking as it relates to care coordination?
Ours is, we actually had a meeting last week with our quality improvement, and it showed us by our clinic where we were at in smoking cessation, fall risk, diabetes, colorectal, and it shows us where we are compared to other clinics as well as the national, and we're doing really well. It's which we work off of our registries, which is where they get this, but so that's how we measure ours.
Well, congratulations for doing well. And the measures you mentioned, are those process or outcome measures?
Process. Well, I guess wouldn't they be both?
I almost think they're outcome measures if you're looking at.
Yeah, it would be outcome measures because we're seeing how many people we're hitting and where that number's going. So yes, it would be outcome.
Awesome, that's great. So it's the end result.
Right.
You might have process measures before then, but now you're looking at the really.
Because I guess our process measure would be the registries.
Yes.
And we're hitting them, and the outcome is our outcome. So.
Very good. Excellent. And
right.
Anybody else who wants to share their process and or outcome measures?
I don't have any current ones, Nora, but in the past we've looked at like from the time we get a patient referral, how quickly can we get them in to see them for diabetes education? And then as far as that'd be a process, I believe. And then outcome measures, there are standard ones that we have to maintain our national recognition with the American Diabetes Association. So that's things like A1Cs, hemoglobin A1C measure, and maybe blood pressure or whatever. We choose a couple of lab or what should I say, measurable outcomes like that per year, and then at least one behavioral outcome like medication compliance by the patient, which is a little fuzzier, I guess, to measure. But anyway, that's what we've done in the past. That's what we typically do.
Excellent. Yes, so you mentioned your process measure was time limited. So you had maybe an initiative where you were just looking to improve like one section. How quickly are people seen? Mm-hmm. And that is very common. Your quality improvement department, if you have one, might identify these short-term projects, and then you'll measure those and work on those. Great. And then, of course, the outcomes. We're always looking that our patients are getting healthier and that they're meeting their behavioral goals, because that just means so much to maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Great, Anne. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else who has a completely different patient population, what you are tracking internally or even reporting?
Nora, in our clinic, we measure like mental health. We screen the patient at the front desk. We kind of tally who needs help, who doesn't. We do a lot of diabetes with the diabetes education, with the registered dietitian. They kind of work hand in hand together. And now that we've, kind of pushed that more, that's gotten better. So the process of that has, and the outcomes are looking better. Every year we always have goals as far as colonoscopies, PAPs, mammos, DEXAs. Those are kind of always on our radar, but, definitely better outcomes for better care.
Wonderful. And I want to ask you to specify on the behavioral mental health outcomes. That seems difficult to measure. What exactly are you looking at there?
So our front desk, when they check in, they give them a questionnaire. Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling lonely? And then when they come into the room with the MA kind of goes over that and scores them with the PSQ. I think that's what it's called. And then based on the outcome on that, they let the provider know, and then the provider meets with the patient, and then we also have a psychologist step in, and then they make an appointment based on whatever is going on with the patient.
Wonderful.
But I started that last year, so this year it's kind of like a given that everybody in the clinic's doing it. We don't have a lot of patients who, immediately say, yes, I want to do this, but then we do catch the ones that do want the help or are willing to come to therapy. And so those outcomes are better. We're able to give those patients resources with food, if they need food, with food banks or mental health or other issues with our case managers, and then the patient navigators getting them navigated to wherever they need to go, working together as a team.
Excellent. And that is that's a very good display of a patient really has no wrong door. So if a patient comes in for a medical or physical need, they're still going to be assessed for a mental health need that they potentially have. So even though they don't enter the psychiatric mental health system, they're still going to be referred if they need it. So that's great. no wrong door for your patients. And yes, so the PHQ-2 is a screening of just 2 questions. Usually if they score positive, people follow up with a PHQ-9, which are 9 questions. And that will tell the physician much more about exactly where the problem lies, if it's depression or anxiety or social isolation, that they don't have a support network at home and feel down because of that. Excellent. Great. So we had a physical outcome measures, we had behavioral outcome measures, and then Victoria also told us about being compared to other clinics, which would technically be a process measures, but that's oftentimes how reimbursement gets determined, like how well are you doing to the average? Because we usually can't say, well, this clinic is doing great and this clinic is doing poorly. It's like, compared to what? So usually, if it's Medicare or Medicaid funding, they pool everybody together, see how everybody is doing, then determine the average, and then we can say, okay, this clinic is above average and this clinic is below average, and then the next year, the clinics know what to work on, what their goals can be for the coming year. Excellent. So the next complicated concept that was brought up in this course was the difference between individual level measures and population measures. Is somebody clear on this and can explain what the difference is between an individual measure and a population measure? I know it's not easy. You can just try, and somebody else can help.
I kind of thought like individuals more pertain to like that one patient, and then the population is more like you have your hypertension group and they're all in a category, but then there's that one individual, which would be the individual, not the population.
Absolutely. You got this completely right. So an individual level measure, you're just looking at a single patient over time. It's like, okay, his hemoglobin A1C, the blood sugar measure over 3 months was 9.8, but over time it's coming down. So that way we're looking at a trend in an individual patient. But if you're looking at a population, we might look at your whole registry and take an average of everybody on your registry. So on average, our registry population has had an A1C of 8.1, but over time with our teaching interventions or our referral intervention, the whole cohort came down over time to a 7.9, for example, so which is an improvement. So excellent job. You do need all the individuals to populate the population level measure. So you need the individual first to get to the population. Great way of explaining it, Amy. Thanks. So then another question that gets us to a higher level, to the population level, is what is the triple aim? If you remember the circle with the triangle in it, what is the triple aim and how does that relate to measures?
Are you referring to act, plan, do, and study?
I am not. That's my next question. That's
Sorry.
the Pdsa cycle, but good question. That'll be next.
Okay.
Let me pull it up. I can probably easily get to the triple aim here if I just Google it. Triple aim in healthcare. hoping we get a nice graphic here. No, I clicked on the wrong thing. Triple aim, maybe images. This will for sure prompt you, and you will know immediately what we are talking about. Okay, have a look at this. Just a Google image. Search got us to this triangle, or what we refer to the triple aim. So it's the triple aim of healthcare in general. So we're looking at the whole healthcare system. What do you remember about this?
I think that was the like, it kind of targets every center of the clinic or clinics, so they can gather their data to do more research, to give better care, better and more efficient care.
Yes. So if every clinic gathers data on these three segments of the triangle, and they get reported, then the government can see how is the country doing as a whole, and provide resources if we still have gaps in one sector or another. So why this matters? In the past, we were under the impression that we can only have 2 of these aims, but not 3. You can either have a healthy population and very satisfied patients, but it'll always cost more. The per capita cost will be high. Or if you invest a lot of money, if you're in your per cap, or if you actually cut the money and say, well, we're just not going to spend that much in healthcare, maybe your population is not as healthy. Or maybe the experience of care, which is your patient satisfaction, would suffer. So now, since really this was a concept really promoted in the Affordable Care Act, so since 2010, we are all aiming to get all 3 segments of this triangle in a balanced manner, so that we have patients who are getting healthier over time, that have a good experience of care, which we measure with patient satisfaction, and that we're not spending too much money in the process. So that's what this is supposed to mean. And again, it's an aggregated measure, meaning the individual patients that you track over time will go into your clinic's reporting. And if you are a Medicare or Medicaid funding recipient, if you get reimbursement through these government funds, then that all gets calculated together to see how we are doing as a healthcare system over time. A concept that you might not immediately be exposed to in your work, but keep this in mind. That's why we're measuring patient satisfaction, because it's really for the funders, for the public funders to see, well, do we have problems here? Are we not balancing our 3 aims correctly? And then oftentimes a government initiative would come out of it to invest more funding or incentives at a particular, at this particular problem that we have, maybe patient satisfaction. Great. So getting back to the question that you just raised, what is the Pdsa cycle? And how would you use it in your own work? Have you ever been in an initiative that was trying to improve? And did you recognize the Pdsa cycle, the Plan, Do, Study, Act, the last assignment that you completed with the 10 questions that you had to answer free form? So do you use the Pdsa cycle in your work? Has it ever come up? And which initiative did you use it for?
Last year, we used the Pdsa cycle for the diabetes, like to get patients to come to their appointment. So we developed a team, and it was a green team, and every Wednesday we would get together and discuss how can we remind a patient to follow up every 3 months, every 6 months, depending on their A1C, to make sure they're getting scheduled. And we worked as a team. So the people who answer the phone documented on the visit note patients coming in for DM follow-up or diabetes follow-up, patients coming in to discuss medicine. And so we found that doing that, and then also calling the patient, reminding the patient, and then just the whole, everybody kind of working together. That was kind of like the plan, and you know, we did it for 6 months, and kind of to keep the patient on track and get our numbers up. I don't know if that
And
makes
what
sense.
was the outcome? Did it work or did it not?
It did work. It did work. We did realize that there was a lot of barriers, you know, as far as patients getting to the appointment or, you know, understanding the seriousness of taking their medication. But it was another thing that we had to refer back to what worked, what didn't work, what, you know, and then we rolled it to 3 other teams, the blue team and the red team. So everybody kind of got on board, and we kind of did like a little contest, you know, to motivate everybody in each department to get on board, and it worked really well. And then we kind of do the same thing with different things, with colonoscopy, with mammos, with PAPs, just depending on our numbers and what's down and what we think patients need more of at the moment.
Wonderful. So this was really at a heart a care coordination initiative, because you brought in all these different providers, the front desk, the clinical providers, the non-clinical providers, to measure how we're doing it together. Mm-hmm. And what I really love about what you're describing, it was really like an experiment. It's not that we're just like implementing it, and if it works or not, we're just doing it. But you're actually just doing it on an experimental level, and then really learn from the data or the experience of the providers, like how did it really work for everybody, or is this too much of a time drain and not worth the effort? So that's really what the Pdsa cycle is about. It allows you to experiment with changes. Yeah. Excellent example.
Thank you.
Anybody else who's done a quality improvement initiative on a trial basis? And maybe you don't even realize that it was on a trial basis because it was successful and then it was adopted.
We did a simple thing, or I mean, I guess fairly small patient population. It was just within our department, but one of our I guess quality measures or outcome measures or whatever was we were trying to for patient safety, I guess, since insulin is considered a safety concern as far as medications go, a risk at-risk medication or so. Anyways, we would whenever we had a patient with a new insulin start or changing their insulin, like maybe changing from one type of insulin to another or a more difficult, involved regimen, we would, because we all work on different days, we aren't all there every single day, then it was a communications process, I guess, improvement. So, and then also to see if it improved the outcome for the patient as far as not making errors in their insulin use, using it as accurately as possible. So we had to communicate, okay, kind of a handoff thing. Okay, I did this with this patient, so-and-so, you're here the next day. Will you please check with this patient? This is what I did. Check and see if they're, if they have questions or if it's working for them, and then give that feedback. So continuing on with the communication and feedback, kind of like a loop, but within our whole group rather than just between two individuals. So.
Great. Also really at the heart care coordination, because you're looking at this process measure of patient handoff, which is just so important, because in the very beginning of this course, we talked about patients falling through the gaps and how dangerous this can be, especially with these high-risk medications. So did you end up adopting this, or was it just like a learning experience? Like, did you
I think
gather lessons learned?
I think we kind of internalized it, because the figuring out how to even make the system, our internal system work, the communication, that was even part of the process. You know, like, okay, where can we post a note that the next person will look at as soon as they come in that next day and see, okay, these are the patients I need to check on about their insulin dosing. And then, you know, then where do you record the follow-up? Now that we have the electronic record, it's just, I don't know, it streamlines the process. So now it's just a natural thing where people, you know, you can see, oh, well, this patient was seen yesterday for such and such a procedure. I can look and see if any follow-up is needed, or as soon as you're finished with the patient, you can send a note for follow-up to whichever educator is going to be there that day, and by way of it through Epic and into their in basket, and then they will see that when they sit down and open up their computer for the day. So I guess it was setting the process up, seeing that the patients, we got feedback from them that they, you know, they appreciated the follow-ups, and you know, as far as patient medication errors or anything, I don't know. We didn't really track that, but we just got the process, I guess, streamlined so that it works effectively, which was part of the initiative.
Wonderful. I love that you're even using the term process, because it's really what it's doing. It's getting lessons learned about the process and not primarily about the outcomes, which could come later, right? You said you were looking at your patient satisfaction, but not necessarily if errors were reduced, but that could come later. So now you just focused on the process part of it, and that's really important. It's really the first step. If your processes are not